Hi there, Mohammed. My name is Ellen, and I'll be doing this correction for you today. I see that your exam is coming up in a few short days, so let's see how you're doing here. Okay, I understand you need a 7, so let's see. You've got a process diagram, the manufacturing of instant noodles. Okay, so fine. Let's take a look at what you wrote. The diagram shows a schematic of the manufacturing process of instant noodles in a factory. All the processes are automated with no human interaction. Okay. To begin with, a truck carries flour to storage silos that feed the mixer that mixes water, oil, and flour to make a dough. Dough sheets are then produced by the act of rollers that move the sheets to the fourth stage of the process, where it is cut into strips. Dough strips are then made into noodle discs, without that S, that are still raw and to be cooked. Noodles are then cooked in oil and dried for seasoning and packaging processes. Let's see, how about that? Hold on. Okay. I want to double check that one more time in a minute. Okay, so noodles are then cooked in oil and dried for seasoning and packaging processes. Vegetable and spices are added to the noodles that are packed in cups, which is the most popular form of noodles available in markets. Does it say that anywhere? Okay. The last process is labeling and sealing of the product in order to be carried and distributed to warehouses and supermarkets. In conclusion, noodles are turned from flour to labeled noodle cups through a series of 8 automated processes in a factory. Okay. So the overall sense of this is that it's very good. You had a good introduction. You had a good overview. You wrote it as a conclusion. Me personally, I prefer it right after the introduction for a variety of reasons, but that's fine. You're more than, you certainly can put it at the end, although I do like it better at the right after the introduction. Just because, well, one of the reasons is because it's an overview, not a conclusion. So, but I thought it was good. That's the point. There were a couple of there were a couple of areas of awkwardness in some of the language. Nothing really serious, though. I mean, I'm happy to go through it again to tell you what some of those mistakes were. There were also a couple of areas where I thought you could have done a better job of cohesion, meaning that there was a little repetition. Where was it? Like here, the mixer that mixes. So I thought there were other ways that you could have expressed this to make a more cohesive kind of task here. So why don't we look through those 2 main paragraphs to see what you did and correct some of those mistakes, okay? So to begin with, a truck carries flour to storage silos that, here, this is strange here. You could have done something like this. A truck carries flour to storage silos. Let's see. Before mixing the flour, water, and oil in a machine to make a dough. That's one way you could have done it without changing a lot of this, okay? That's one way. Of course, it's not the only way, and there are probably better ways. Let's see, mixer, water, and oil. Okay. So, dough sheets are then produced. Now, this was strange. The act of rollers. Rollers are not an act, okay? So, you wanted a different expression here. It should have been something more like dough sheets are then produced after being passed through rollers. Okay, so it's not an act of a rolling or act of a roller. That was awkward. So, okay, something like that would have been better, because the rollers are essentially flattening that dough in order to make a sheet. So that's essentially what you're trying to say here. Okay. Okay, that then move the sheets to the fourth stage of the process. Where does it? You mean they, because it's the sheets that are being cut here. Okay, so that's another mistake where the cohesion is lost here. Okay, so it should be where they are cut into strips. Dough strips are then made into noodle, without that S, discs that are still raw, and this was awkward. It makes sense. I understand what you mean. They are to be cooked. I think that's what you mean here, but it's not really correct. You could have just left that are still raw, full stop. Okay? It's a little superfluous too, so just get rid of that last section. So the noodles are then cooked in oil and dried for seasoning and packaging processes. Now here I wanted to just double check your accuracy. Let's see. They are cooked and dried. That's number 5. And no, that's number 6. And then you say they are vegetables and spices. Here's where you kind of lost me. Let me just double check. So for seasoning and packaging processes. Yeah, maybe this is what confused me, but I think this is essentially, it's a topic sentence is what you were trying to do here, right? I think this is what you meant to do, and then you went into some detail. So it's okay, although it did create a little confusion. So noodles are then cooked in oil and dried. Okay, so I actually don't think I wanted that topic sentence here, because when you got to this vegetable and spices are added, I didn't know which stage of the process we were at now. So that was a little confusing for me. So I would have stopped here at cooked and dried, full stop. Then you could have just said vegetables and spices are added to the noodles that are packed in cups. And then here, get rid of this. So there was nothing about this in the diagram. And so you don't want to include any information that is not given to you. All right, you're making an assumption here, so you definitely don't want that in this answer. So the last process is labeling and sealing of the product in order. This was awkward. In order for what to be carried out? In order to, the last process is labeling and sealing of the product in order to be distributed to warehouses and supermarkets. Okay, and then it was fine. Let's see. Yeah, and then the rest of it was fine. So I really liked this. I thought you did a great job. But just some little things, little details. I thought it was a good answer. It was a solid answer. So well done. But again, some little things here and there that could have been corrected in order to really put you on the path to get that score you want. Let's take a look at your task 2 here. Let me see the topic. This is a topic that you selected on your own, so let me just give it a quick read through. People say that advertising is extremely successful in persuading us to buy things. Other people think that advertising is so common, we no longer pay attention to it. Discuss both these views and give your opinion. Okay, fine. People argue about whether advertising is really successful at encouraging us to buy things, or it has become so popular that we don't even pay attention to it anymore. While I wholeheartedly agree with the second view, I will try to discuss both views. All right, so it's okay. But there are a couple things I want to change here. First of all, the word popular is not appropriate. It's the wrong word here, essentially. We're not talking about the popularity of advertising. We're talking about the prevalence of it, how widespread it is. Okay? So popular is not the right word. And then the second thing here is that we don't use contractions in task 2 ever. Contractions are considered informal, all right? So they have no place in a task 2, so just keep that in mind. And then I wasn't really hugely in favor of this sentence because, again, it just felt a little conversational. I will try to discuss both views. So I would have preferred a more academic sounding sentence. Okay, so since you're going to discuss both views, you could say, let's see, while I wholeheartedly agree with the second view, this essay will present arguments and evidence to support both viewpoints. Okay, so that would have been a nice way to do it. Let's move on now. To begin with, some people say that the more creative you are with advertising, the more people would notice it and actually buy the product you were trying to sell. If there were no advertising, people would not, again, no contraction, know about a lot of products, especially international ones. I wanted a comma here before especially. For example, my friend Ahmed, who only buys American products despite the fact that he lived in Egypt for all his life. That's not a full sentence, okay? It's a fragment because you have my friend Ahmed, and then you have this relative clause, and then there's no verb to continue it. So I think we need to attach it to the next sentence. So watch this. For example, my friend Ahmed, who only buys American products, or you know what? Why don't we do this? For example, my friend Ahmed only buys American products despite the fact that he lived in Egypt for all of his life. This would not have happened if he had not watched advertisements for these products. Also, lots of people buy things like clothes only because a celebrity had already advertised it. Some advertising agencies are smart enough to make hidden promotions. They pay money for actors and bloggers to make people think that this is what they normally use in their everyday life. Okay, this is good. Obviously, you had a number of contractions that we had to fix. That's a minor detail. I know now that you know it, you're not going to do it again. I felt like this was missing in linkers. Now, I want to say something about linking devices. You don't want to go overboard with them because then it feels very kind of intermediate. And I know you don't want to write an intermediate task 2. Far from it. You want a higher level task 2. But still, it needed a little more glue. And the area of this essay that I'm referring to is this here. Now, I understood this to be one main idea, and you developed it. That's clear. But it needed to be better kind of worked. Okay? So let's see if we can come up with some ideas here. Also, lots of people buy things like clothes only because a celebrity had already advertised it. So let's try this. This is a strategy of many advertising agencies where they pay money to actors and bloggers to make people think that this is what they normally use in their everyday life, thus influencing people to buy the products they are using. Okay, so do you see what I did? I just kind of glued it together a little bit more and extended it a little bit more. And then I think it works. All right, so let's move on. Other people, in comma, including me, would say that people nowadays are aware of how advertising works. A lot of these companies are trying to scam us for money while their products are worthless. This is what makes us not bother to watch any commercial or look at an advertisement. For example, my older sister, who shares the same thought, never buys clothes or any other products that were advertised. She only trusts her friends' reviews and opinions on the products they use. People who do not trust advertising are very careful when it comes to buying things. They try to have their own experiences and judge the goods they buy accordingly. To sum up, people have different opinions when it comes to the advertising effect on people's '(s) buying habits. I actually would have preferred the effect of advertising, but we all should be aware of this effect and look thoroughly before buying things. All right, so I liked this. I thought this was a very nicely written essay. I'll tell you what for me was the weak area. Okay, we dealt with this. It was not a big deal. It just needed a little reshifting here and there, and we solved it. I thought your second paragraph was fine. What you didn't really talk about here in this paragraph was how common advertising is, okay? Yeah, you told us that people understand how it works, but if you remember, where is it? Here it is. It's so common we no longer pay attention to it. So it's not about whether they're trying to trick us, but the fact that it's so common that we ignore it, okay? So yeah, you said you're trying to scam us. So this isn't really quite the same idea. It's close. You basically are telling us that nobody trusts advertisements because we feel we are trying to be scammed. The essay is telling you though that the advertisements are so common that we don't pay attention to them. So the end result is that we don't pay attention to them, but the reason is different. And you were supposed to discuss that reason, the commonness, and not the fact that we don't trust them. Okay? So that needed to be a little different here. The other thing that I want to talk about in this essay is the vocabulary. That for me was one thing that kind of stuck out throughout this essay as needing to be a little higher level. If you're aiming for that 7, I think some of this vocabulary needs to be a little more academic, a little higher level, and maybe some of these less common collocations. It was all good, but it didn't feel particularly high level. And so that for me needed a little work. Okay, so you're definitely on the right track. You're doing really, really well. I think you're on the right track to getting where you need to be. I know your exam is coming up, so I guess you've got maybe a little less than a week. If you would like, you can certainly sign up for some essay corrections with us in that time. We'll definitely try to work fast and get the corrections back to you so that you can have a little more practice and have more feedback from us before your exam. See if that's something you can do. I'd like to work with you. I'd like to see more work from you, and I'd like to help you improve and get that 7 that you need. So hopefully that's something we can do together. Okay? Either way, I want to wish you lots of luck on your exam. Let us know if we can do anything else for you. Good luck.